Hi, it's Nat, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today's video is going to be a little bit of a backstory around me and why I got into astrology and what moments led up to me really diving into astrology and developing a deep practice with astrology. And I'm probably going to start with my childhood and just an overall general analysis of who I was growing up. So, growing up, I was the shy, quiet kid, and I was very introverted. So, I always had maybe one best friend, a couple friends that I was comfortable with, but for the most part, I kept to myself. I was shy and I was very introspective. Um, and I also was a bit of an outcast growing up. And it's so interesting to think about it now because I truly feel like that I identify as an outcast. But when I look at my childhood, I was like, yeah, I've been this way. So growing up, I was yeah, it was I was kind of alone. Like if I did have people around me, it was like one best friend. But I've always had a small circle. I've always been pretty to myself um and yeah, I was a little bit of an oddball. So that was me growing up. And I also played a lot of sports growing up. Um, and I found that I I was very girly in my early years, and then I was more of a tomboy in my later years. And and then it's interesting because I also found that I was when I was around the right people, I was so animated, so bold, so happy, so smiley and funny. And I just found that certain environments I was this type of person, certain environments I was this type of person. And it all kind of, I'd say if there was a common thing, it was all kind of me standing out and standing out in a good way with certain groups and standing out in a not so good way with certain groups. So that was kind of the general, I guess, my general personality growing up. Um, And I also found that I was very intuitive. Like now I could say, and I could look back at my personality growing up and I could say I was very intuitive, but I didn't know what it was back then, obviously. And I was very and I think it's because I was very connected to myself and very introspective. So I noticed that I was very good with pattern recognition. I was very good um with just being intuitive. And I had a lot of prophetic dreams. I wouldn't say that this was when I was a teenager. It was definitely in my 20s I realized I was having prophetic dreams that would play out in real life. But it made sense that I had prophetic dreams knowing how I grew up. And one thing that I want to note growing up, I was I had a lot of alone time. Even though I found that I was playing sports and I always had good friends around me, even though I had a small circle, they were really good friends. Um, I also felt like my being home, I was alone a lot. And and I know that shaped my personality a lot. It shaped that I rely on myself, I trust myself, I process things on my own. And I know that has to do with just my personality in general, but also how I grew up. So, um, so that is just a little bit of a overview of my childhood in a very, um, very general way. So going back to like when I was in my 20s having prophetic dreams, there was so much, there was like two dreams in particular that like I was like these, like I need to start listing my dreams more. And was one of them had to do with a dream around a grandparent dying. And the way that the dream played out was me sailing across the sea to a hospital to check on someone who I know is in the hospital who's going to pass. And when I got to that hospital, my grandma was in the hospital bed and she was alive. But the next day, I found out that my friend's grandparent passed away, and my friend's grandparent lived overseas. So it was like a moment of having a dream where I'm like, okay, I sailed across the sea in my dream, which made it, which was connected to the event happening overseas. And in sailing across the sea, I knew I was going to see a grandparent. I didn't know who, but I was going to see a grandparent at the hospital. And the fact that I saw my grandma alive, it confirmed that it was a grandparent, but it also confirmed in the dream that it wasn't my grandparent who passed. So that was a moment where I was like I won't forget that dream. I remember that dream very vividly. And then I had another dream that was um, a little bit different. And this is probably like the start of me becoming more aware of my intuition, becoming more aware of my spirituality, and like really wanting to develop a deeper spirituality. And um, and this is also probably the start of when I start getting motivated towards or like push towards astrology. Um, I believe it's 28 I believe it's 2019. And in 2019 I was 24 years old. Excuse me. And I was living in San Francisco at the time, and I had it was a year after I graduated college in San Francisco. So, excuse me. I went to SF State, and and I had an amazing time in San Francisco. I absolutely loved living in the city. Um, and it's like a home away from home, which I'm so grateful for. But it was 2019, and during that time, it was a lot of like natural changes coming up where you're like questioning, like, what am I going to do for work? Who do I want to be? Who do I want around me? What do I want in my relationship? It's all this like change happening right after college. And and I was also dealing with a lot of like issues in my friendships and issues in my dating life. So it was there's a lot of internal struggle for me around this time. And I like specifically can look back at 2019 and like and know exactly what was happening and what I was dealing with. So um I remember that I had a prophetic dream in 2019. It had to be like middle to end of 2019. And during that time where I was like having internal struggle, I was also like really, I was like, do I move back home? I'm originally from San Diego, so I'm like, do I move back home and like, and figure, and like just have kind of like time to figure things out? Or do I move to a different city? I was ready for something new. And I had this prophetic dream, and it involved me and my Thea, and my Thea had passed in 2017. So this was the first time I was like getting a visit from her. And we were at San Francisco State. I remember everything about this. I remember where I saw her. I remember um, what she was wearing. I remember the bench that we sat on. And in this dream, I'm like driving up to my Thea, and she is just waving at me, like waving at me on campus. And it was where my dorm was when I first moved in freshman year. So I pull over and I'm just in stress. I am crying, I'm sobbing, and I'm like, she's sitting on a bench and I'm on my knees and I'm just like, Thea, when am I going home? I don't know when I'm going home. Like, can you tell me when I'm going home? And all she says is, soon, Natalie, soon. And I'm just like crying, 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 because during that time I know how much stress I was under with like just just stress around friendships and relationships and career, and being young and not knowing like how to communicate my feelings, how to ask for help, how to like process this. Like it was just a very stressful moment in my young life. So in this dream I'm like sobbing through my to my Thea, and and she's telling me I'm gonna go home soon, and I wake up and I'm like crying. I wake up crying. I'm like, okay, that was a moment. Like I know that's gonna be an important moment. So um so that was probably like middle to end of 2019. October 2019, I was I had just gotten a new job in the career field that I went to school for. So I felt pretty accomplished. I felt like I was doing the right thing and doing the thing that I needed to do. And I also worked at a really good company, um, and a small company where I learned a lot. So, and I was working with good people too. Um, so that moment, I was excited to work for this company. It was a fully remote position. I I preferred working in an office, but I knew that working from home would be okay, and I knew that I had the luxury of moving when I worked remote, and and I knew that I was pursuing my career. So that was all working really well for me. I was also dating at the time, and um, I was dating a guy who, this was a big life moment for me. Um, I knew this guy wasn't going to be long term, but there was that strong connection with him that I knew was like, well, now I know is like, it felt karmic. It felt like a instant connection, but this could probably be a big lesson. So, um, I'm trying to figure out how I can say this, but like to cut to the chase. This relationship, and I'm going to put in a trigger warning, um, this relationship was abusive, and it didn't last long. It was about 6 to 7 months, but it was emotionally, verbally, and sexually abusive. And the abuse happened throughout the relationship, and it happened sporadically, and it happened overtly and covertly. But it all led into sexual abuse and a specific moment that happened that was a huge moment in my life. And um, and what happened in this moment, without getting too detailed, is I was sexually abused in my room, and I remember the morning, I remember how I felt afterward, and the kicker was I my office space was in my room. So after it happened, I had to log on to work just about 30 minutes afterward and start my day. And um, that was like the most insane thing to me. Um, and it was so it was so weird dealing with that and knowing that like I had to act like nothing happened. Like the what do you do in that situation? And I think because it was sexual abuse, I had so much shame instantly that I was like, I just have to carry on with my day. And that in that moment, I knew, I remembered how I felt. I remember what I was thinking when I was logging into my computer and starting my day. I was like, I'm going home. Like, I'm moving back to San Diego. I'm leaving. Um, I don't feel that I can tell anyone at this moment, but I know if I'm home, I'm going to be around family. So, um, so that was the moment that I was like, I know that I'm moving. I know that I'm moving home. I know that I need to change. I know that I need to go to therapy. And and that was starting to make me very aware of my patterns. And I was also thinking about this dream that I had with my Thea in it, and thinking about, okay, well, she said I was going home soon. I'm going home now. I didn't know this is why I was going to go home. But it was just like I'm always looking at meaning. I always put meaning behind things. Um, and I'm trying to make a connection with the physical realm and the unseen and spiritual realm. That's just something that comes very natural to me. And I think I'm going to do a couple videos on this, and probably end this video here. That was in 2020 when I decided to go home. And that was in February 2020 when this life-changing event happened to me. And I realized I'm going home. I love San Francisco, but I'm coming to this point where I need something new and I need a change. And now I feel like I gotta take care of myself. So I'm gonna go home. And um, and then COVID happened, and um, it was interesting that like COVID happened. Everyone was dealing with the shutdown. Everyone was dealing with the chaos, and everyone was working from home or dealing how to work with um, with the COVID lockdown. So it was just like kind of a natural time for me to go home. And before I end this video, um, I I would say that the rest of my work at that company and like the what I was associating like working from home was with the sexual abuse that happened, because it happened in my room. And it happened in my room, and then 30 minutes later I had to start work in my room. It was just a very odd thing. And like it's also like if it were any other type of experience, like a medical emergency, a family emergency, um whatever, it would have been something that I could tell my boss. But the fact that it was sexual abuse was like, instantly I shut down. Instantly I was like, I can't tell anyone at this moment. And that was a really hard thing to deal with. And it made me really think about how this happens to so many people and so many women, but so many people. And it doesn't have to be related to something I went through, but it's like life-changing events that happen and people feeling like they have to carry on. People feeling like they can't address the situation. People feeling like they have to avoid their feelings around the situation. It just made me think of that in such a like real way. And I think that was like my moment into really knowing I need to be aware of myself. I need to take responsibility for myself. I need to take care of myself. And and that's really when my spirituality, like I've really focused on my spirituality and developing it. So I'm gonna stop this video right here. It's gonna be, I guess, my part one to why I got into astrology. And if anyone has any questions, I'm an open book. I can talk about just about anything, whether you have a question for me about my journey and my story, or if you have a question about something that you've gone through. Um, it's very easy and natural for me to talk about these things, um, and I'd like to answer any questions that anyone has. So here's my part one, and I'll carry on with the next video. And thank you all for listening. Take care.